Hey, Wausome friends, welcome back to another episode of Keep It Wausome podcast, the podcast that brings you the most interesting, quirky, and talented people of central Wisconsin. Today is our big 5-0. That's right. The podcast is episodes old, older than I am years old by a little bit. And today I have a really special guest for that. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsors that helped us get us to 50 episodes. Big shout out to Scotty's Ale House and Eatery. Guys, keep doing what you're doing. It's great stuff. Awesome food, great beer. One of my favorite places. And by Campbell Haynes Menswear. I'm a little more stylish because of you guys. So thanks so much. You guys are great. And last but not least, Verve Salon. So Verve's got whatever your skin type, whatever your color, whatever hair color, hair type, they got you covered. They pretty much handle everything. They can't even work on me, and that's a hard feat. So big shout out to Verve Salon, and hey, big shout out to you guys, man. I wouldn't have, without all you wonderful fans, I wouldn't have made it to 50 episodes of Keep It Wausome and still going strong. So thanks everyone. Thanks for all your support, all your likes and subscribes, and my one patron. Thanks so much for you. I appreciate you. And but anyway, without further ado, today I've got a really special guest. Been a fan of her work since actually this year, earlier this year, I discovered and become one of my favorite artists. And she happens to be from central Wisconsin and is living here now. So, hey, big shout out, big welcome to Nika Danilova, otherwise known as Zola Jesus. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So you must be right in the middle of recording an album right now, I think.
Yeah, I am currently in the process of finishing my next album after having a year hiatus due to COVID. So
Yeah.
that's
How's
been
that
really
been going?
exciting. It's been going really well and moving quickly now that I've been able to travel and get started and because I'm working with a lot of different musicians and I'm working with a co-producer, and so a lot of that just takes being in the same room or figuring out remote options.
Yeah, that's a challenge to go back between those two. And I know a lot of musicians now are kind of doing things where they can send files around and stuff. That kind of baffles me. Like I guess maybe because I haven't done it, but I'm really curious about how all that works.
Yeah, there are many different ways to do it. Not all of them are reliable, but it's better than nothing. So that's for sure.
So what is your writing process for an album look like? Like how much time are you spending doing the writing? When do you decide, oh, this is where I want it? I'm curious about how all that looks like.
Yeah, it definitely changes based on kind of where I'm at in my life and what the record calls for. But because I do produce a lot of it myself, the writing process is very lonely and isolated, and it's usually just me alone in a cabin or me in my house, my home studio, um, trying to work out some ideas. But lately I've been more interested in collaborating. So the songs kind of sit and marinate until I figure out what they're missing, and then I try to find the people that will help kind of bring those aspects of the song to life.
Yeah, and I imagine with the career that you've had, you've encountered a lot of musicians and probably gathered a lot of people. If you think of something, you're like, oh, I know who can do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things like back in our City Pages interview, what was that, 6-7 months ago, something like that. You kind of talked about how you do a lot of the producing and we work on the beats and work with synths. And I think one of the things I felt kind of bad about after the interview is like I don't think I gave you enough credit for that because I don't think I understood how technically involved a lot of that stuff is.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, but it's just part of the process, especially these days. You kind of have to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and you just learn it. So I've just learned it through the years.
Yeah, so a lot of trial and error and eventually start figuring it out, huh?
Totally. Yeah, a lot of it.
So I kind of wanted to go back and talk about your evolution as a musician. You said you grew up, I think you went to Wausome West, is that right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like well, tell me about how you got into music, how it started. I think it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. Well, I've always been really passionate about music for no discernible reason, but I started taking piano lessons and then voice lessons shortly after when I was around like 7 or 8. And then from there, piano wasn't as exciting to me, but voice really was. I loved to sing, and and so I grew up studying voice classically, so studying operatically. I wanted to become an opera singer. And then by the time I hit high school, the self-criticism and the self-hatred from studying operatic classical singing as a child really seeped its way into my personality, and made me really fall out of love with music in a way, because it felt so constrained. Like I felt like I was
Uh-oh, we lost you.
expressive. Once I discovered punk music in middle school and noise, and maybe I'll move inside. Here. I'm gonna move inside. 1 second. Let me just turn the video off quickly.
No problem.
Because I realized that my being outside is bad for the connection. So I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Is this might be a little bit better?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So yeah, I once I discovered punk music and experimental music and stuff, I became very inspired to find my own way with music instead of just relying on the classical path.
Yeah, classical music is great, but it can be kind of stifling. Because I was a music major my first time at school, and it kind of spit me out of music for a while.
Yeah. It can be really, really disillusioning. So
I mean, I love classical music to this day, but it's like the process of like actually studying it and kind of being, it just kind of forces, I feel like it forces you into a box in some ways. Like if you aren't able to approach it from, a place that you're comfortable with, I think.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything when it comes to classical music. And so I don't know. I don't like that.
Right. And I mean, the opera influence is so obvious in your music.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah.
I think so. You think so too?
Yeah, I think I didn't think so until more recently, but
really?
I think it's obviously there because my voice is, operatically trained. So
yeah. So you discovered punk, and I think it was when you were saying when you were at UW-Madison, that's when you started getting into more electronic music, is that, or experimental music, I should say?
Yeah, that's when I started learning that I could make music myself and being equipped to do that, getting like a 4-track and hooking that up to a computer and stuff. And then once I figured out how to kind of channel my creativity and my musical ideas in a really sort of personal, intimate way on my own, then everything sort of opened. And I was like, wow, I can do whatever I want. That's amazing. So then once I went to college, I started getting really into just making music and writing music and experimenting and exploring and playing shows with a bunch of different types of bands, and really growing a lot culturally.
What was your first show like?
It was in the basement of the Glass Nickel in Madison on the east side.
Nice.
And it was just me and a really bad Yamaha keyboard I got from Best Buy in Wausome. And
shout out Best Buy.
Shout out the Best Buy, River Mountain. And it was really, really cringe, like very bad.
Oh man.
But I have trouble singing and playing at the same time sometimes, because I get so into the singing part, I kind of forget the playing part. And then I realized that I haven't been playing the piano the whole time. I've just been singing.
That's awesome.
So
I can relate, because sometimes when I sing and play guitar, I'll notice that my strum pattern, if I have a part that the rhythm is quicker, I'll be playing the rhythm on my guitar instead of the rhythm that I had already set. Like I just noticed they start matching. I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah, it's a pain, but
piano is kind of hard too, because it's like, your hands have to move different from each other versus like it was hard for me, like when I became a music major, because I was so used to like stringed instruments. Like I played viola, I played bass, and then guitar, and like, so my hands were used to moving in tandem, like to make one thing happen. And piano, you have to almost separate them, and that just scrambled my brain. So credit to you for being able to do that.
I can't really do it. And that's the thing, like when I'll perform live with a piano, because it's the closest It's the closest sort of instrument that I feel comfortable with using to back up my voice. But there's too much going on. I can really only keep it very simple. I can't
Right.
go too crazy, especially when I'm singing.
So how many people were at that first show?
Like my friends, maybe like 15, 10,
Yeah.
5. 0, somewhere between 0 and 15. But at least the other bands that were playing were there, so that's good.
That's always helpful. At least you get some audience there.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the feeling? What was the feeling you took away from it? Did you feel like, wow, I want to do this again?
I felt very remorseful and embarrassed,
Really?
but because it was just like a very bad performance. But I loved the adrenaline rush of it, and so that's what kind of kept me going.
Interesting.
I like the thrill of being on stage.
So I think with every art form, like you kind of have to go through this phase where you like create stuff that you don't like, that you feel like isn't good, and a lot of people have trouble getting through that stage. And it sounds like kind of that first show was sort of like, it was sort of like getting some of that out, but also there was something there that like kept you hooked.
Yeah, I mean, there were still many shows like that afterwards. It took me a long time to learn how to be better. But very quickly, I mean, this is just, I don't know, it's just something I've always wanted and always felt very naturally sort of drawn to is music and singing and playing music. So something that's very rewarding to me to do.
Do you think it was as bad as you think it was, or do you think you were more self-critical than the average person would be?
I think it was worse than I thought it was, based on the expressions of my friends after the show. But whatever.
Well, you must
19.
Yeah, you must have gotten them to come back to you a couple more though.
Yeah, I mean, if you make friends, they'll have to come to everything. So
yeah. Well, when did it start turning around where you were happy with what you were making or happy with shows?
Maybe like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think you said that to me.
Probably.
I think you said that to me before too. That's really interesting to me, because your career started well before that, right?
Yeah, but I had so much learning to do, and you kind of can only learn by doing it, and so you end up, doing a lot of things that you wish you would have done better before, but didn't know until then. So, yeah.
How did it evolve into a career? How did you go from a college student playing some shows in a basement to being Zola Jesus, basically?
I started making music as Zola Jesus during college when I was in Madison. And then I started getting hit up by labels on MySpace and stuff to put releases out. And so I would be, writing music and recording it. And that would be getting in the way of my studies and stuff. And I was starting to struggle in school a little bit, keeping up with everything, because I was also working 2 jobs at the time. I was working at a art gallery and I was working at a coffee shop. And so it was just a lot. And then at some point, I got fired from the art gallery job. And like I get fired from every job, like that's just real. But
they found out you were secretly a musician, and they're like, "You're out of here."
No, they just thought I was inept, which I was, but fair enough. But that was sort of the time when I was like, okay, I want to do this. Like, I'm not going to get another job. I'm going to see if I can do this. And so I ended up playing shows, moving to LA, and graduating by going to online school at my last year, and then starting to go on tour and stuff.
Wow. That's really interesting. So when you went to LA, did you have, I mean, it sounded like you had some label interest, but like, did you have like a contract when you moved to LA, or was it kind of I'm just going to see if this will work?
Well, I moved to LA actually because my partner at the time was graduating earlier than me and was moving there, and so I was like, okay, I'll come with. And I didn't actually want to go to LA. I didn't like it. It didn't resonate with me. Coming from Wisconsin, LA is the exact opposite. And I still stand by that. But I did spend like 3 years there. but yeah, by that time I had a record label, a small label that I'm actually still on to this day. And I just basically moved there to just get out of Madison and see what the rest of the country was like. And yeah.
And so from that small label, you started touring around, and is that how things kind of took off?
Yeah, touring around, and then I got a manager, and she really helped kind of organize things and take a lot of the pressure off of you know everything else that was happening, because at that time there was Pitchfork and a lot of music websites and
Yeah.
music magazines. There was a lot of press, and there was just a lot of stuff. And there's not as much stuff like that anymore, I don't think, but back then there was. And so
Well,
that stuff helped generate a lot.
I follow Stereo Gum, and you pop up on there quite a bit. Well,
Yeah, I love them.
I shouldn't say quite a bit, but often enough. Like I'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, I know her. I'll be reading
Yeah,
through
they're
Twitter,
great.
and it's like, oh, there she is.
I'm glad they're still going.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool site. I think they went through they revamped in some way. I can't remember all the details now, but something happened with them recently. I wish, but yeah, no, that's one of my favorite ones. I like that one.
Me too. A lot.
So performing wise, like what have been some of your favorite performances? I think sometimes you said sometimes you like the small venues almost more than the big ones.
Yeah, my favorite performances have been actually non-standard performances with like string quartets, just
Oh yeah.
because it allows me to really be able to sing and express myself through singing, because there's more space in the music. Whereas when I'm on stage with my normal show, it's very like cacophonous and bombastic and maximalist. And my voice and my performance is just kind of one small part of that, which is still really fun. But I like to really stretch my muscles as a musician on stage. So performing with string quartets allows me to do that.
Yeah, and you had that one album that was strings based, and
Yeah.
if I recall right, it was a lot of the songs you already had written, but it was with the string instrumentation instead. Is that right?
Yep, it was like a string remix album, basically.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I know someone for whom that's their favorite album of yours.
Oh, that's awesome.
I really so I bought, since we last talked, I bought Okovi on vinyl, and I
Oh,
have to
thank you.
yeah, yeah, and I have to say, I promise I'm not just buttering you up, but of all the vinyl records I have, Okovi like pops on vinyl more than any other record I own.
Oh,
And I
that's
wonder,
good.
yeah, I wonder if you had any insight about why that is, because it really surprised me. Like I put it on and it just kind of knocked me on my ass.
Probably because my record label is kind of known for their vinyl issues and their
Ah,
vinyl pressings and their boxes sets and their vinyl packaging. And but Caleb, who runs the label, is just really, he's a vinyl listener and lover, and he takes that really seriously. Like you're not going to get a bad pressing when you listen to a Sacred Bones record.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, that one is just excellent, and I really think
Cool.
it really kind of blew me away when I turned it on. I was like, oh my gosh.
That's awesome. I'm gonna
Yeah, and
let
I'd
them know.
listened to it, on Spotify and stuff before, but on vinyl, that one just boom, really hits you in the gut. So that's awesome.
That's great.
So I guess yeah, so you were in LA for a while. When did you decide? Because I think you said you moved to Seattle after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually you moved back to Wisconsin. I'm really interested in that. Like
Yeah.
you really seem to have a lot of love for Wisconsin. And I had to laugh. I was watching one of your performances at the Pitchfork Festival in Chicago, and I think you called them FBIs, like uh you're like fucking like
Oh,
that, or Fibs,
yeah, yeah.
FIB,
Yeah,
yeah.
fibs.
Yeah.
Fibs. Yeah. I love to
Like,
call people fibs when I play in Chicago.
yeah, like right in the middle of Chicago. I'm like, man, that girl's got guts.
I mean, it's just such a part of the culture up here, especially like when you get up towards like this area and Tomahawk and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I was living in LA, and then I really missed nature, and I missed like the woods. And so then I moved to the Pacific Northwest because I wanted mountains too. I wanted it all. I wanted the
Yeah.
mountains, the water, the woods, everything. And so and I really liked Seattle. So I lived there for a couple years and tried to buy a house there, and I don't know, nothing felt right. And then at some point, I was feeling really sort of confused about where I belonged. And I realized that I belong back in Wisconsin, and I could very easily build a house for cheap on the land where I grew up, and I could, live near my parents and live near my family. I come from a big family, so that was important to me because I travel so much, and so much of my life is not in Wisconsin that I really was starting to disconnect from the people that I loved and cherished the most in my life, just from being gone all the time. So here it's like when I'm home, I can be with family, but usually I'm mostly traveling. So it just worked well for my lifestyle.
Yeah. Do you feel like doing the traveling that you've done has helped you appreciate Wisconsin more?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And also just traveling and realizing a lot of places in Europe just reminded me of home. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I just missed also the people. Like there's just, I don't know, people are very down to earth here. And I respect that. I respect that more than whatever else I encountered
Yeah,
in places
right.
like LA and stuff, So
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that. I had kind of the same experience traveling too, especially like I remember the first time I went to Japan, and I was at this camp like teaching English kind of out in the woods, and one of my fellow teachers and I walked out in the woods and took a walk, and we're like, man, we could be like in Wisconsin right now. It just made me think of home, and I didn't expect to have that experience in Japan because you just think like people and buildings and things, and
yeah,
yeah, it
I
was pretty
know.
neat. Yeah. But yeah, I find you had a lot of Wisconsin pride when I travel around too. Like, I actually found Johnsonville brats for sale at a roadside in Japan. I was like,
Oh
that's,
my gosh, that's
I was like,
crazy.
that's wild. I
That's amazing.
had to buy one just so I
Yeah.
could say I ate one in Japan. But
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to Alaska before I moved to Wisconsin. I was still living in Seattle and I went to Alaska for a trip, and because I've always wanted to go. And I remember getting on a bus in Denali, because that's how you get around in Denali. And the bus driver was from Wisconsin. And she was like, I moved to Alaska to escape the Wisconsin winters. And I thought that was so funny. I was like, you know what? Wisconsin's cool. I like
yeah,
that. I like how inhospitable it is.
yeah, I know. Cool in
That people
both.
will move to Alaska. Yeah.
Yeah, cool in both sense of the words, right?
Yeah, but quite cool.
Hey,
Yeah.
there were definitely, when I was keeping track of it more, there were definitely days where it was warmer in a lot of parts of Alaska than it was Wisconsin. I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
I
That
was,
that lake effect.
yeah, I had a friend who's like her brother lived in Alaska, and he came to visit for a while. So for a while, I was like keeping track of like I think he was on the Kenai Peninsula.
Oh
I
yeah.
would watch him like, hey man, it's warmer there than it is here. What am I doing here?
It's crazy. Yeah.
So what was it like moving back? I mean, the funny thing is my other interview for this month, he also lived in LA for a couple of years, and a lot of people I know that moved out to like California and other places, when they come back, part of them almost feels, I don't know, like they didn't make it or something. And I don't that maybe that's not the case for you because you have a pretty successful musical career, but I don't know. What were the feelings like coming back? I imagine it's kind of a mix.
Yeah. At first I was like, I was sort of falling back in love with it because it felt like Northern exposure or something, where I was like coming
Yeah.
back and it's like so cute. Everything's so cute. Everything's so cheap. Like this is great.
Are you a fan of Northern
Um,
Exposure, by the way?
yeah, I did watch it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I liked it. Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
it's
I
great.
love that show. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
Yeah. Such a great show.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't feel like I couldn't make it in LA. It's not
Yeah.
like that. It's like I knew something about myself and about what's important to me, because honestly, I suffer from depression. I'm depressed everywhere I go. I could be in Russia or France or California or Brazil and I'll still be depressed. So I might as well be near family. That's
Right.
kind of how I see it, where it's like, no matter what, I'm going to be unhappy. So I might as well be unhappy near the people that I love. Uh, but like LA, that's the thing that I don't like about it, is that there's so much and not just LA, but like leaving Wisconsin and like going out. There's so much pressure to like make it or whatever. But
Yeah.
that in itself is so sort of like, I don't know, it's so disconnected from like one's roots or one's sort of lineage or one's family, or, you know, I
Mhm.
don't know what one actually needs in their life to feel fulfilled. It's not going out and
Yeah.
making it in LA. Like LA doesn't make you, like you make you. And so
Right.
I feel more sort of like established, like living in the woods in Wisconsin than I do living in LA. Because in LA, you also like compared with everybody else. Like here, I've got no one to compare myself with because we're not focused on those things, you know? We're
Yeah.
just getting our groceries and going back home and playing with our dogs. Like, I don't know, it's a different mentality here.
Yeah. But didn't you tell me like when you met people, you generally got the sense that they were trying to like figure out what they could get from you or like how they could benefit from knowing you or something like that?
There's a lot of that, especially
Mhm.
just kind of like, you know, maybe being having visibility or exposure, and so people think that you're more maybe valuable than you actually are. And then just watching people try to exploit that, you know, it's like, uh, I don't know, maybe I see through it too much, but
Yeah. I mean, it's a bummer. It's like
whatever.
I've always been a fan of like just getting to know people for themselves, you know.
Yeah,
I think more
me
people do
too.
that in
Yeah.
Wisconsin, you know, than but yeah, the making it thing is interesting. So my friend Tim Seeley's a pretty well known that I went to high
Oh, I
school
love
with.
yeah, I like his
Yeah, you know
comic.
Tim?
Yeah, well, I know of his the graphic novel that's set in like Weston or
Oh
the
yeah,
different stuff.
Revival. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple copies.
Oh nice. Yeah. So he's actually he drew the picture right there.
Oh,
That's that's
cute.
that's that's supposed to be me as Peter Parker, the reporters.
That's adorable.
Yeah, that's pretty
Oh,
cool. He did that at he was here in town and he did that for me. But yeah, him and his brothers are all super cool. But one of the I bring him up because one of the reasons is so he, you know, he does a lot of these conventions and people ask him like, well, how do you make it in the comic book industry? And he's like, well, you don't make it. No one, there's
yeah,
no like magical portal that you go through and someone hands you the key and goes, no, you're amongst the successful comic book people. You know, it's like you just keep doing it. It's like there is no making
yeah,
it. You know, that's like I think that's good because I think a lot of people want permission to go do the things they want to do, and it's like just shut up and go do it. You know?
yeah. Go do it. There's no difference. I mean, the only difference between me and maybe somebody else is like, yeah, I had some opportunities which I am aware of and had the privilege to have, but also I don't stop. I don't give up. Like
Yeah,
if you just keep doing it long enough, you'll end up being something will end up happening. You just can't stop or just
yeah,
do it, you know?
I agree. Yeah, even this podcast. I mean, like thought about shutting it down a couple times, and I'm just like, oh, am I having fun doing it? Let's just keep doing it then. And
Yeah.
you know, I think when you and I had talked last, like I had canceled all my sponsorships because you know everybody was closed, and I didn't want to hold anybody to it. And slowly but surely, one of them came back, and then I started getting more back. So now we're sponsored again.
That's
It's
awesome.
fun, you know.
That's
I
great.
just, yeah, I think your point is really good. Like, I think a lot of people, you know, might run into obstacles and stop, but like, if you really want to do something, you got to just keep. I think you got to just keep doing it and take the ups and downs.
Yeah. Yeah. And be humble, you know? I mean, like
Hmm.
the I feel like I'm at a place now where I feel I don't know. Actually, I don't feel anything. I don't feel security at all whatsoever. Like I feel like this job is completely unstable. There's no security. You constantly have to be aware of, you know, just your space within culture, and it's very exhausting. But, you know, you've also just got to stay humble and realize that if it's something that this is something that I want, so I'm willing to work extra hard for it because this is this is it for me.
Well, and this must have been a really challenging time for that because I mean, it's always kind of a little unstable, but right now, you know, for the past year, I mean, things have been crazy for
Yeah.
musicians.
Yeah, it's been really hard emotionally and psychologically. Uh, but thanks to Patreon, I've been able to be supported throughout all of this. Usually I would have to be touring and stuff like that. So the fact that I have Patreon is just like a lifesaver this year.
Do you think that'll change how you approach the business side of music going forward?
Yeah, it already is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable being outspoken. I feel more comfortable taking artistic risks. I feel more comfortable investing in my music and in my art because I know that I have this thing to fall back on, that I'm being supported, so I can actually take risks. Yeah, it's been incredible, like all of the ways in which I feel like it's freed me. But it's also like, you don't know, it could go away tomorrow. So it's
Right.
also very, very scary.
No, as I recall, you told me last time that you were an introvert.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So was it hard to like kind of I watched a few of your one day I watched a few of your you were doing those live those videos on Instagram for a
Oh
while,
yeah.
and I think you kind of talked about how that made you like a little nervous, or that you weren't used to putting yourself out there like that. And I imagine with Patreon you kind of have to do that too. Was that hard for you, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still struggle with that, like trying to find the balance between feeling comfortable with the amount at which I'm like sort of disclosing and my own sort of privacy and need for, I don't know, having boundaries.
Hmm.
But I think it's important, honestly, if it means that I'm helping somebody in some way feel less alone, feel supported themselves, feel anything, like I'd much rather be a little bit more uncomfortable and like, be a part of something more important than, be too afraid to speak up.
Yeah. And speaking of business models, like I know you've been pretty critical of Spotify. I wonder what do you maybe you want to like talk about your criticism of Spotify a little bit first. I'll give you a platform to do that, and then
Yeah.
maybe you can. I don't know if you have like do you have like a better model in mind? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know, but it's not so much of like, yeah, it's basically Spotify and streaming has completely revolutionized the music industry and changed the way
Hmm.
that people consume music. But the way in which it was started was built off of uh, kind of laying out the terms for artists and then basically telling them that there's no other option, because the amount that artists get paid for streaming is so minuscule compared to record sales 10 years ago. And now no one's buying records because music is so accessible through streaming. But then streaming is killing musicians and killing art because it's not supporting artists enough. It's just not a sustainable model for artists and for music. It's kind of like it's too good to be true, and so that's the
Hmm.
problem. We just really need to find new ways of being able to support artists and have them be paid fairly for their work, because so many of my friends who are less successful or less lucky than I am have had to get jobs and stop making music because they couldn't survive on it, and they used to be able to survive. Like
Hmm.
before Spotify, so many of my friends were able to like survive making experimental music or noise music, and now they can't. And it's like, that's not their fault, that's the fault of the system, and it needs to be recalibrated, I feel.
Yeah. What do you think that recalibration system is? Because like when I try to think about like, well, now you've kind of let the beast out of the cage, so to speak, right? Like it's pretty hard to put it back in the
Yeah.
box. So like, what is that? Do you think that looks like Spotify just increasing revenues? And I know I heard an interesting podcast talking about how like the big five record companies essentially struck this deal with Spotify, so they still get paid pretty well. And that's always been kind of a theme throughout music's history, is that the record companies really dominated things. Like I remember seeing a breakdown
Yeah.
in like the late 90s between how much, here's the cost of a record and here's where it all goes. And like I think the band got of like a $14 CD, the band got like $1 of it. And then that had to be split between
Yeah.
like producers and all the band members and paying expenses. So it's always been a pretty like slanted system against
Yeah.
musicians. And Spotify seems like a continuation of that in a lot of ways, and maybe a further slanting of that.
Yeah, because I mean, music, this is the thing, Spotify is able to exist because of the way that the internet has grown and evolved. But in doing that, it's also allowed artists to have more, democracy in terms of how they release their music or where they release their music and stuff like that. But if you're still driving all of the listeners to these corporate platforms, the artists aren't getting to reap the benefits of the democratization of the internet. You know,
Yeah.
we're continuing to be enslaved by the corporate infrastructures that try to draw lines around us and try to siphon any sort of potential exploitative profit from the artist. So yeah, that's not new, but it's just like, it's like, really, now there's so many options available to us for how we can see the future, and this is what we have. We just have a worse version of what we already had. It's like, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
problem.
one of my one of my frustrations with the platform is so they have a new release like listing when on Fridays when new releases come out, but it's only like a certain type of record or a certain, I don't know, like maybe from certain labels. I don't really know how they select it, but like a lot of bands that I'll follow on Spotify aren't, they might release something new and it's not coming up in that feed. There's no mechanism for me to see, oh, this artist that has like 500 monthly listeners, like there's no way for me
Yeah,
to see their new record unless I go look at them. And that's a frustrating, because I think yeah, what you're kind of getting at is they're creating these silos, and the silos are almost worse than they were in the record
yeah.
days.
Well, because they're saying, oh, but you have more choices than ever, like more people, more access, like listeners have more access to more types of music and artists have more access to listeners. But at the same time, when the Discover Weekly or whatever, the algorithm is floating payola at the top, it's the same thing where it's like no one's even able to discover the underground artists because Spotify is only pushing the artists that they have deals with. So does Apple Music, like, and everything is so. If you look at the top charts for Apple Music and the top charts for Spotify, they're actually like quite different because of just
Interesting.
the not only the demographics of who is using those, but also like who Apple has deals with and who's pushing them towards listeners. It's all just totally rigged, and that's just the way it always was and always will be. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
but you
I
gotta
don't want to
speak
stand.
out, right? Like otherwise
Well,
nothing changes, right?
that's the thing. It's like, it's either I continue to pander to these platforms that have done nothing for me. I've never been on any Spotify editorial playlists. Like, they've really done nothing for me. Or, so am I going to be a shill for them, or am I going to actually use my voice to say this sucks? Like, I'd rather do that, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah. For the listener, I mean, what do you think is the best way to support the music that you like? Like, I'm a big fan of buying the vinyl. I tend to save it for like certain records, like stuff that really, really speaks to me and really pops. But I don't know, I guess Patreon is starting to become more of a thing for musicians too. Are there other avenues besides that?
I think, well, Bandcamp is an amazing
Oh yeah.
website for people to discover underground music and to support underground musicians directly. Um, and that's how a lot of my friends and peers are selling their music these days. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, Patreon is really important. I mean, it's also hard though too, because the economy is just such a mess where people don't have as much sort of like, you know, extra money to be throwing around at artists that they like. But if you do really love a particular musician, they would benefit from something,
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought up Bandcamp. Actually, that's where I bought Okovi from too. And there's a few other bands locally and otherwise that I'll try to buy stuff through.
Yeah,
I think
it's a good option.
that's a good site, and it's been around for a while. And one of the things I liked about it is that early on, like a lot of the Japanese music that I liked, it was the only place you could find it where you could buy it without, I don't know, some intermediary, back in like 08, 09. Like it was harder to find a lot of those bands, and like that was an easy way for it was crazy to me at the time, thinking like there's this like indie band I follow in Japan and I can buy their thing like right here on Bandcamp and listen to it. That's pretty neat.
I know, it's really changing also, just like the concept of discovering music, because everything is so accessible. You don't have to dig as hard, but I guess if you are just used to looking at Spotify's front page, it might be a little bit more digging. But
yeah, it's like you don't have to dig as hard, but in a way you kind of do.
It's like, yeah, my friend put it well, where it's more like the digging is just like digging through all of the content to try to find the thing that you like. instead of, you know, I don't know, digging through a record bin.
Yeah, it's just like the discovery process is different, but it's like now you're fighting the algorithm to get to new stuff. And I'm fighting that damn
Yeah,
algorithm all the time.
I know.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Ugh,
Yeah, I mean, they all
unfortunately.
work differently. Like here on YouTube, like I never know what's going to be what's going to blow up on it and what's not. It's total. It seems
Yeah.
totally random.
It is funny that when there's artists that like did blow up because of the algorithm, like that, and that's
Yeah.
happened a lot on YouTube. There are bands that, you know, every other streaming service, they have very few plays, but then on YouTube there's tons because the algorithm just is driving so many people to it.
Yeah, there was
I
a
think it's
band
funny.
from the 90s that it was something like one of their songs sounded like it was like the same as something that was popular. So like
Mm,
their band all of a sudden like blew up. This is like a band from the 90s.
that's
And
really
they were
funny.
on Spotify, but they were, hardly anyone was thinking about them anymore. And they just like blew up because they happened to have this name that was similar that the algorithm liked. So it started like spitting
That's
it to
funny.
people. That was
That's
hilarious.
cool. You got to appease the algorithm gods.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess like I mean it kind of does speak to like that keep going because you never like random things like that happen, like maybe not on that scale, but in some ways
Mhm.
and like that if you just keep going that allows that time for something like that to happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So what gets you excited about music today? Like what I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't know what way to rephrase that, but I just wonder like what excites you musically today? Maybe how that's different from in the
Mm,
past.
things that, oh, my dog's right here. Nadia.
Hey puppy.
No, not right now. Um, what excites me? Things that are that I can that I feel like have a lot of maybe authenticity or intimacy, an emotional quality that feels very raw. Because I think a lot these days it's easier for people to make music, and it's easier for people to make music that sounds good. But it's not. It's will never be easy for people to make music that actually is good and that holds that sort of umami of the soul, you know. And so I just try to find that, but it's kind of vague. So
Yeah, by the way, do you have a lot of Japanese influence in your life? Because I know like you've like you used hikikomori in one of your songs, and you just used umami now, and I've noticed a little bit of that. Is that
well, I really love Japanese. What is it? Kind of like the way of life, like
Mhm.
Ikebana and Zen Buddhism. I'm kind of not a practitioner of Zen, but I'm a practitioner of Buddhism in some ways. And also just like wabi sabi, just things. I like how the Japanese culture really values the essence of things,
Mhm.
and that's something that also just like Japanese film I like a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting culture. I've gone there, 3 times now. Kind of like
I've
getting
always wanted to go.
kind of getting the bug to go back. I've kind of like I've gotten the bug to start studying the language again, and I was surprised at how much I
Cool.
remembered. It was kind of neat. I have some friends there, and I've been chatting with them on Instagram. I'm like, oh my god, I still remember some of this. Like, that's
That's
wild.
amazing.
So I don't
Oh,
know. It's
I would
just like
love to go.
it's cool. It's a cool place. It'd be great for music too. It'd be fun to like play some shows there, I bet.
Yeah, that's my dream. It's just, I don't know, it hasn't happened, but hopefully it will soon because I've got the
Yeah,
itch.
nice, nice. Well, if you need some musician friends over there, I can probably help you out.
Thank you. It's good to know.
It's pretty cool how I was surprised at how the shows work. So I kind of made friends with a couple of these bands on Twitter, and I told them I was going on this trip with a couple of my friends, and I was like, hey, you guys are playing that week. I want to come see you. And so they're like, oh, we'll reserve tickets for you. But apparently reserving is just like saying, yeah, this person's going to come. Like there's no money involved until you get there. And when you go to the show, they ask, even if there's like 4 bands, they ask you who you're there to see.
Huh.
And I was like, oh well, I guess the one guy like made a thing about making the reservations for me, so I guess I'll say I'm there to see him, but I was there to see like all the bands. So I was interested in all of them, but well, it turns out that that's how they calculate the what they pay the band. So if 25%
Wow.
say they're there for you, then they give you 25% of the revenue.
That's really interesting. It's
Yeah,
much less hierarchical. Uh, it's more that's more democratic actually when you think about it. It's more like
sure.
letting the people decide who is the real headliner.
Right, like an opening act could actually make the most
Yeah.
money theoretically. I mean, it's probably not likely, but
Yeah, that's
yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. It kind of surprised me, but it was a neat. And they went a lot of photography at the time. I don't know if they've changed that, but I don't know what the reason was behind that.
That's
As
cool.
I wasn't much of a photographer at the time, but now I am, and I would be annoyed by that. But
Oh, I wish we had some good Japanese food here in Wausau. It's my
yeah,
favorite
I
food.
know it's kind of a bummer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah.
go to Tokyo, you'll just be run for American Japanese food. It's
Yeah. I went to I was in New York a couple weeks ago to resume my record making, but one of my favorite restaurants is closing soon,
oh
and
no,
it's a Japanese restaurant called Kijitsu, and it's all Shojin cuisine, which means it's Buddhist temple food, so it's all
oh,
vegan, and
interesting.
so exceptional, so good, but very specific, very it's all like, like a raw lotus root or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah. I can't see that going over in say Merrill.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I don't know. Maybe one
I
day.
think Wasa just got used to sushi like 10 years ago. So
Yeah, I know. We're still even working on it.
raw fish, what?
What? I know. I thought it'd be fun to start a restaurant. Like I've always wanted to start a restaurant, especially up here. But it would be funny to serve like walleye sushi or something.
Oh, like sushi.
Like that. Like bringing like the North Woods
And
and the Wisconsin like culture, but try to like like invert it or something.
Japanese Northwoods fusion, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. That might not go over too well.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, I mean, it must feel good to be working on a record again, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, very good. And it all feels very different. I think the year off was really I don't know, it was edifying for sure. Changed me. So that's cool.
How did your songwriting go during that period? Did you like amass like way too much music, or did you kind of stop writing for a little while, or how did that work?
I kind of stopped writing just because of the psychic toll of the time was so much for me that it just exhausted me. It
Mhm.
depleted me. I couldn't focus. As soon as Biden was inaugurated, and I'm not saying things are perfect now by any stretch of the imagination, but as soon as Biden was inaugurated, I could feel myself starting to be creative again because that the energy of 2020 was so manic, and it just felt like, okay, now we can move forward, and I can create that manic energy for myself, and that's how
Right.
you make music and make art. You use it's a lot of creative and destructive energy, but if that's happening all around you, like for me, I was just trying to be stable. I was trying to be a rock. I was just trying to get through it, so it was hard for me to really let loose.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know some people really kind of steered into the pandemic and energy. Like I know Adam Grohl came out with a record called Quarantine Tangerine. A few people kind of steered
That's
into that,
cool.
and there's a few other people that like, I know like kind of did take a little break. I think the people, yeah, some people like my friend Harold, he ended up like Substyle ended up kind of breaking up, and now he's kind of doing his own solo thing, and it was almost like a phoenix rising from the ashes, kind of a thing for some people, I think.
Yeah. I mean, probably for me too, but it definitely took getting through it to be on the other side of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny because for me, like I actually like dove into music again, like
That's
because of the pandemic,
awesome.
and I had time, and like all of a sudden I was playing again and I was writing, and it's
Um,
like, oh wow, it's so interesting to different people's like take on it and how you respond to
yeah,
it.
totally. It was also hard for me because a lot of my writing has to do with sort of fantasizing about touring and playing it live, because touring is like making the record usually takes much less time than it does to tour it like endlessly. And so that's when the music really happens, I feel. But if I can't
Interesting.
tour or if I can't perform it, I can't, the relationship with the music is so strange to me. It doesn't feel rooted in anything. It feels like, what's this for, you know? But maybe for you, it was more exciting because you just had this time and this energy to put into
Yeah.
something that for
Yeah.
you isn't connected to performing. It's connected to just you letting it out in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I do you know who Nare Soul is? She's a pianist and she has a YouTube channel, and I came across her music, and a lot of her stuff is about the creation of music. And I don't know, it was something, I think she started like lighting these little sparks of like, hey, I should do this again. I miss
Oh,
this. And then, then the pandemic hit, and, I ended up working less. A lot of people, some people, I was furloughed for a bit. I had some time and space, and I just started looking at my guitar again, and I'm like, it's over in the corner. Actually, I can show, there they are. Can you see it?
hey, look at
There's
that.
the
Yeah.
guitars.
What is that, a Jag?
No,
Or no,
the green one, my greenie
Piano
meanie.
Electro? Yeah, what
No,
is
no,
that?
that's a Fender
Nice.
Telecaster.
Oh,
Uh,
Telecaster.
yep,
Yeah.
I've been calling it my Corona
Very good.
guitar because I bought it. I bought it in part
I
with the
love it.
pandemic money that we got back in,
Yes, that's what you're doing with
and
it.
and is made in Corona, California. So it really is truly my Corona
Meant to
guitar.
be.
And then
I love
my
it.
old Epiphone Les Paul, and then my handy dandy
Nice.
cracked Takamine acoustic.
Awesome. I used to
Yeah.
love those.
Yep,
They're great.
all those nice things to make some noise. So that's fun times. But
Cool. That's so exciting.
so yeah, so what do you feel like changed then? If you were, the well, I guess you said it was the inauguration kind of gave you the energy, and
Yeah. And
so it
then
must,
just realizing the vaccine too was coming
yeah,
felt good. Yeah.
yeah. So you talked about changing. Do you feel like your writing changed a lot on this album?
Yeah, and I feel like the way in which I work is changing,
Really?
because the first sort of 10 years of my music making was about sort of like establishing myself and defending kind of what I can offer. And by doing that, I feel like I didn't like to take advice or help from people. I didn't like collaborating with people because people always assume that I'm not writing my music anyway. So I go extra hard to be like, no, I did all this myself. And my ego just kind of
Yeah.
shed at some point, and I felt like I don't care about that anymore. I want to know what other people's ideas are like. I want this song to be the best it can be, and I don't care if I can't take it there. Like I just want it to go there. So that was really different for me. I'm starting to let go of the process a little bit more. Um, and it's exciting, but it feels very unnatural.
Interesting. Do you feel like the pandemic gave you that space to come to that realization, or was it independent of that?
Yeah, I think the pandemic just broke me down so low that and I was just so overwhelmed with the world and everything that I felt like I needed help. Like I needed someone to help me. And then in doing that, I just learned how much more magical and fun the process is. And also just learning to embrace the process of making instead of the process of or instead of just finishing it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I want to enjoy the making of it, which means I want to make it with people that I love and that I can share those memories with, and
Mhm.
that, I want the whole journey to feel fun and not like a self-flagellation like it usually
Yeah.
is.
No, I think there's something about, I think a lot of people will kind of like maybe come to the wrong conclusion and think like getting together with other people is like taking each other's ideas, but it's more like I feel like you kind of bounce off each other when you get with the right
Yeah.
people. Like you play, you might play something and then that sparks something in them and then they bounce off of it. I know like I brought songs to my friend Harold and then he'll go off on it and he'll create a new song based on that. And I'll kind of like bounce off of him. It's kind of a neat process.
It is, and when you think about it, like it's so foreign to me because I'm such like an isolated creator, but it's so cool when you think about how music as itself is such like an abstract, strange language, and to be able to share that with somebody else and to collaborate on it together, it's very spiritual, and it's a lot of trust, and it's intimacy. And again, like I was saying earlier, there's something about that I really like, that I feel like it just elevates the art and makes it have so much more soul.
Yeah, definitely. So, I wanted to bring up too you've released that single that was, benefiting the Armenian people, which are in the midst of a war right now. Maybe you can tell readers a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, so I was learning the song Krunk, which is an Armenian folk song, and I just fell in love with the song. And I've always wanted to record it, but I was too afraid to. But then I got this piano. This was my pandemic gift to myself.
Oh,
This
nice.
piano. And but I was like, okay, if I get this piano, I have to record it and work, I've got to like use it. Mm-hmm. So then I decided to record that song. And because Armenia was in the midst of a huge struggle with Azerbaijan, I thought it would be a really good opportunity to do that song and to donate the proceeds to an Armenian organization.
Was that a challenging song for you?
Yes, it's not really in, I'm not saying it's not in my range, but it's not in a range that I'm comfortable recording. And it's not in a range that I'm comfortable like publicizing, because it is like more of like my operatic voice.
I was gonna say it's quite a bit higher pitched than your typical. You actually sing it. On your records, you sing at a pretty low range, huh?
Yeah, just because it's more. I have more control over that part of my voice. The upper part is because by nature of the operatic sort of singing, it's all about releasing and letting go. And I'm so bad at that it's easier for me to just go, her. Just to like yell or howl. But I want to get better at it, and I want to challenge myself. So yeah.
I thought it came out great. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It's a pretty powerful piece, I thought. And supported a good cause, I guess. So did you raise a pretty good amount of money for the Armenians?
Yeah, I raised like $1,000, which is
nice.
Pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty good.
That feels good. Yeah.
I know, it's great.
So how long are people gonna have to wait for the new record? When's that coming out?
Depends on when I can tour, really. Probably safely next spring.
Oh, really?
So yeah, but it's going to be a very good piece of music, so I'm excited.
Well, I look forward to it.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, maybe I can play Wausome finally on my tour.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
I think a lot of people will be really excited about that.
I don't know. I feel like I'm a bane on the existence of this place.
Why do you feel like that?
I don't know. I feel like that everywhere I go. I'm like, I'm sorry.
I don't think that's true, but
okay, good.
Actually, I'm surprised at how many people know who you are, because like people don't really like readily talk about you a lot, but like if I bring you up, a lot of people, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people seem to be aware of you. So oops.
That's good. Well, I mean, I also wasn't very popular in school, and so I wasn't very like outstanding. So I don't know.
Yeah, me neither. We're usually the ones that end up doing cool stuff, though, I think.
I think that's true. Yeah, That's what I tell myself.
I think it's true. That's what I'm sticking with anyway.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. Well, hey,
Cool.
this was awesome. I'm so excited to have you on my show today, and I enjoyed talking with you last time, and I enjoyed it today as well. So, where should people, if people want to follow you, where would you recommend they go, and what album should they start with, or song maybe?
Well, I would say go to zolajesus.com. All the links you need are there. But I'm on all the social media platforms. So, and I would say start with the Kofi, the most recent album, because it's, you know, my most sort of accomplished piece of work to date, I would say, and I'm very proud of it. Yeah.
I'd agree with that. Get it on vinyl. It sounds awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
this was
thanks
great.
for
Hope to
thanks
see
for
you at Whitewater.
Yeah, for sure. And so I always end my podcast by saying having my guests say keep it Wausome. So keep it Wausome, Nika.
Keep it Wausome.
Hey, she even gave me the W. That's awesome. All right. You guys out there in Wausome land, you guys keep it Wausome too, and we'll see you for episode 51.